Hello and welcome to Full Throttle in association with the Alliance of British Drivers here on Unprecedented TV. I'm Paul Naylor, Director of Communications at the ABD, and today I'm joined by Andrew Montford, Director of Net Zero Watch, one of the clearest and most forensic voices in the country on what the net zero agenda is really costing Britain. There's never been a more important time to have this conversation, and so it's with some pride that I say, good morning, Andrew. Hello.
It's lovely to be here.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello. So, I suppose for anybody out there that doesn't know who you are and what the organisation is about, give us the elevator pitch. Tell us who you are and what you're all about, Andrew, please.
So my name's Andrew Montford. I'm director of Net Zero Watch, which is a campaigning organisation. We're very small, but we campaign for rational energy and climate policy. We mainly focus on energy.
Yeah.
Our work is kind of concentrated in two main areas. I'm essentially an energy geek, so I spend my time worrying about how we can fix the shambles that our electricity system has got itself into, and actually the more broader energy system as well. And then we also spend time thinking about how we can prepare public opinion for the changes that will have to be made. I mean, things are going to have to change dramatically, and I think people aren't ready for the scale of change and the upheaval, and some of the really quite unpleasant things that we're going to have to do if we're going to get cheap power again.
So expand on that a bit. What sort of things are we talking about here?
Well, okay, so at the moment, the electricity system is where the big problems are. There are also problems with the North Sea, but they're relatively straightforward to fix. We just need to get on and drill in the North Sea. So that's relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
The electricity system is in much more of a mess. We've essentially doubled the cost of the electricity system in the last 20 years. When we started doing renewables in the early 2000s, the cost essentially has risen pretty much every year to today. And the important thing to understand about that rise in costs is that what we're left with now is mainly fixed costs. So it doesn't matter how much electricity you consume, those costs don't go away. So if once you built a wind farm, you have to keep paying for it. Now what that means is, if we are going to get cheap electricity again, we have to remove some of those fixed costs from the grid, i.e. we have to either close down things that we have built, or to at least stop paying for them so that they close themselves down. Now, that is a huge step, because it means that people have invested money in the UK economy and they are going to have to lose their shirts. Now, this is not going to be great for future investor confidence, but our view is that it has to happen anyway. And in fact, investors will see that we are directing the UK back towards prosperity and away from the, if you like, the economic death spiral that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, that certainly is a big concern of ours. There seems to be a lot of what we call, and I think is a general term for it, is a lot of virtue signaling going on. It's all well and good saying that we're doing this, we're doing that, we're going to be using renewables for this, we're not going to drill in the North Sea, but that therefore has to come from somewhere else and is then imported to us from countries that may not have such a clean way of producing the stuff that we would have done in the first place.
Yeah. Now, when you're talking about fossil fuels, when you're talking about oil and gas, yes, it obviously it's much better to produce them here, because because our environmental standards are higher, and two, because there isn't the environmental and economic impact of shipping them halfway around the world. So obviously we should do that, but the electricity system is rather more difficult. there are all sorts of problems with fixing the system. I've talked about we are going to have to make a whole lot of people lose their shirts, but there are also major problems in that we are going to have to build other things, which again costs money. We need new gas-fired power stations. If we don't have wind farms, we're going to need more gas, but also our existing fleet of gas-fired power stations is now really old. I mean, a lot of these were built nearly 30 years ago. And essentially they either need major refurbishment or we need to build new ones. Now, the lead time for a new gas-fired power station is now something like 5 years. Now, in 5 years' time, many of them will have closed. So there is a real risk of blackouts now because we simply won't have enough power stations to deliver electricity in the middle of winter.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on nuclear?
Nuclear is I'm pro-nuclear. I worry that it has been so overregulated now that it will be very difficult for it to ever be economic, for it to actually survive in some sort of a free market, or even with a small level of subsidies, it would still struggle. The other problem with nuclear is it's going to take a long time to deliver.
Leading time, and that's huge, isn't it? Yeah.
That's right. The planning and permitting and the design clearances take a long time. Now, there are certain things that we can do there. If one takes the view that Rolls-Royce, which is much touted in the media as Rolls-Royce's small modular reactor is going to be the centerpiece of our future energy strategy. In reality, I don't think it is. I think Rolls-Royce are so far behind the game now that they're probably not worth worrying about. Also, it's an old design of reactor in essence, and it's an old technology. We shouldn't be doing it. So, in fact, what we could do is just open the doors to the rest of the world and say, look, Americans, to an American SMR company, if you have cleared your designs in the States, we will accept it in the UK. You can just come over here and build, and that will speed up the whole process. So, I think nuclear does have a future, but it's not easy.
So on the basis, say that goes ahead and we start building nuclear reactors around the country. What sort of size are these? You say the Rolls-Royce ones are quite small. I take the other ones that we're talking about, American ones, they're of a similar sort of size.
Right. So the Rolls-Royce one, in fact, is not really very small at all. So if you think about a big wind farm or a big gas-fired power station, they might be getting on for a gigawatt, 1,000 megawatts. Now, the Rolls-Royce is 500 megawatts, so it's about half the size. Hinkley's, I think, at one point it's a couple of gigawatts. So it's
what sort of coverage would you get
of Hinkley? Whereas the American ones, a lot of them are really quite small. They're 100 megawatts rather than 500. They're much, much smaller. So the idea of building them small and building them repeatedly works much better with the American ones and the Canadian ones and whatever. So that's another reason I'm not convinced that Rolls-Royce is the answer. There is another school of thought, though, which says actually we should be building big ones, because there are a whole lot more problems with small nuclear power stations. You need to enrich the uranium much more, which is, again, it's a safety issue. And nuclear power stations have their own police force. So the power stations are policed. Now, how are you going to do that if you have a nuclear power station in every city? Are people going to accept a nuclear power station in every city? It's an interesting question. I don't know. I think the reality is we actually need to focus on gas, and dare I say it, we will probably have to build some coal-fired power stations again.
Yeah. And when we talk about gas, are we talking shale gas?
Shale gas. Well, we have a big shale gas resource. So there is a lot of shale down there under Lancashire and Lincolnshire, and also some in central Scotland as well. We
Mhm.
don't really know whether we can get it out. Quadrilla, who were drilling in Lancashire sort of 10 years ago, were saying yes, that their initial results had been very promising and they were extremely hopeful. I've spoken to the people who own the concession in Lincolnshire, and they are extremely optimistic. They say it's an absolutely wonderful resource, but with all these things, you don't, the proof is in the pudding. You don't know until you've actually done it. But so shale is going to have to happen. If only because it's one of the very few ways we've got to get the price of energy down. If we do shale, it will be cheaper than LNG imported halfway around the world from America.
So I think with shale and also with nuclear, I think there is a broad public feeling that both of them have dangers associated with them. Whether that's right or wrong, that people think that, but I think that's the perception. You see the word.
Yeah, nuclear. I think that's right. I think people are becoming more accepting of nuclear now. People are convinced that they still believe we have to do low carbon. So nuclear seems like a no-brainer, and the rest of the world is going for nuclear in quite a big way now. So I think nuclear is growing in acceptance. I think if shale was allowed to get off the ground, it would become generally accepted in the way it has been in America. I mean, it's not really controversial anymore. You have to remember that the Obama administration, the left, were very big on shale. They went for shale in a huge way. Oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
So yeah, shale, I think, can become accepted. The other thing to say about shale, there were these earth tremors when they were drilling in Lancashire all those years ago. Now, one, they were only tremors. They were extremely small, the kind of thing you get when a lorry drives past your door. Now, I live on a main road and lorries drive past my door all the time. So it's no worse than that. Those sort of tremors were very common when you had mine in areas where there was mining. You got tremors all the time. And the third thing to say is that the technology has moved on in the last 10 years so that they can actually steer the drilling away from faults in a way that they couldn't 10 years ago. So it's much less likely you will get tremors anyway. So I think we should be trying shale again, just because things are getting desperate. Our energy system is in such a mess now that we have to. Politicians need to be braver.
I think certainly a concern of the Alliance of British Drivers, who have evolved from sort of being primarily a motoring related organisation. We've moved now onto other matters such as net zero, hence the chat we're having today. And I think the thing that more than anything else that is needed is a proper explanation to the public about, like you say, the developments now in shale extraction, the fact that it is probably a lot a lot easier to do now, a lot more targeted than it used to be, the benefits of nuclear power, and the fact that the frustrating thing in terms of the North Sea gas thing is that Norway, they're happily taking what they can from effectively the same pot and then selling it on to us. It's ridiculous.
There's this rather comical idea that Ed Miliband and people of his ilk have, that we are the climate leaders and everybody's looking at us to find out how to do it. And of course, you look around the world and there's absolutely nobody really left following the crazy road that we're going down. I mean, the Americans have just announced an expansion of coal-fired power. The Germans are expanding their coal again. The Italians are reopening coal as well. We are almost out on a limb now. There's nobody else who is pursuing net zero with the religious zeal that Ed Miliband is. So
and that's exactly what it is.
I mean, I think it isn't just that people need to understand the possibilities of new technology, they also need to understand the risks that we're running. The risk of blackouts is really quite high now. I mean, I have contacts in NESO, the grid operator. I was talking to one of my contacts there, and he was saying, he doubts whether we would make it through a hard winter. If we got a winter like 2010, where you got 3 weeks of minus 10 degrees. I mean, it got down to minus 13 where I live, and it's dark. There's no wind. He said, actually, I don't think we would make it through that. And I said, oh my goodness, do you have a generator? And he said, I have two. I am always surprised by the number of people I know who have expertise in the electricity grid who have generators, because they're that worried about it.
Yes, it certainly is very worrying. I think the other thing as well is that we were talking about potential impact on the cost of energy with the scenario like that as well. So, supply and demand, energy bills are only going to soar. The bills are due to rise by 13% in July anyway. And Miliband promised to cut them by £300. How does he square that with the public?
Yeah, I think the increase in July, I think, actually, to be fair to Ed Miliband, I don't really want to be fair to Ed Miliband, but I am going to be fair to Ed Miliband.
We'll let you.
Yeah. That increase from the previous price cap was down in the Middle East, and so he can honestly say that wasn't me. But what you've got to understand is that the increase over the last 10 years has got very little to do with the price of gas coming from the Middle East or from anywhere else. It's all about net zero. One of the things I have done over the last 6 months is to produce a very detailed analysis of the numbers behind the price cap, so that essentially we can show what has caused the long-term increase. And it is absolutely clear that the direct, what you might call the direct cost, the price of making electricity in a gas-fired power station, the wholesale cost, if you like, hasn't really gone up very much. The increases have come from, one, subsidies to renewables, carbon taxes, and lastly, and the thing that's sort of just really becoming urgent now is what you would call the network costs. So this is building all the new pylons to bring electricity from the far north in Scotland, where the wind farms make it, to the markets in the south. And the other aspect of that is paying wind farms to switch off. Those costs are rising very quickly, and they are going to accelerate. They are really going to soar in the next 5 to 10 years. So when Ed Miliband is saying we'll build more wind farms and bring your bills down, it simply isn't true. His own government's figures show that bills are going to go up a lot. Now, we already have the most expensive electricity pretty much in the developed world. So for us to get another 30 or 40% increase in prices over the next 5 to 10 years is going to be a catastrophe. And the economy will melt down long before it happens. So that is what people should be worried about. And that is what people in the media, I think, particularly, should be pressing the government on. If their own government's figures are showing that bills are going to soar, we can't carry on going in that direction, can we?
No, we can't. No, I mean, I personally, and this is my personal view, is I'm not totally adverse to renewables, but they should be a small part of a bigger mix of energy production. If somebody wants to put solar panels on their house, let them. If it helps them out, great. But don't force them.
Again, you see, I would disagree with you there. To start with a small amount of renewables. If you add a wind farm to the grid, let's say you've got a grid that runs completely on gas. If you add one wind farm to the grid, you save yourself a bit of gas because you don't burn as much gas, but you add the cost of the wind farm. And actually, the cost of the wind farm is more than the gas you save,
Right.
unless gas prices are very high. So
Yeah.
why would you have one wind farm? I mean, you might make an argument for energy security, but not really. The other thing about adding like rooftop solar is you still need the whole grid to be there. So when people leave the grid or partially leave the grid because they're getting their electricity from solar panels and maybe from a battery, the grid is still there. The cost of the grid hasn't really gone down very much because you've only saved yourself a little bit of gas, and therefore the costs, essentially your unit costs have to rise. Essentially, this is why, one of the reasons anyway, why your standing charge keeps going up is because essentially people are leaving the grid, but the cost of the grid hasn't gone down. So the standing charge has to increase.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I was talking on behalf of the loonies, and I got the answer I needed, so that was great. Yeah, it's something that needed clarification, and I think that's brilliant. The way that you said that there, that really does sort of like make anybody that thinks that they're being look at me, I've got some solar panels. Think again. It's
that's right. The cost hasn't gone away. It's going to come back. And it'll bite you in the bum eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It just comes from a different dog.
Yeah, correct.
Oh dear. So the campaign to scrap renewable expansion. So last October, you launched a campaign to scrap renewables. So your argument, I mean, we've talked a bit about it there. What would you, if you had to put it in a nutshell, what would that statement be?
So I guess the simple statement is that we can't have cheap electricity again until we've closed down the renewables fleet. So that is the long and short of it. So the question is then, are we going to close down the renewables fleet by government diktat? The government will get sued, but it may be that that's what we have to do. The alternative is that you let them sort of wither away, because they have finite lives, and if there's no more subsidies available, they will eventually close. That unfortunately means you don't get cheap electricity until the 2050s, the 2060s, and are we going to have any manufacturing industry left? Are we going to have any commerce left? If that happens. So these are the very unpleasant decisions that whoever gets to be the next government is going to have to make. They're going to have to decide how far they're willing to go, and are they willing to face down the lawsuits and that kind of thing. We're going to need very brave politicians, and they don't seem to be in very great supply at the moment, do they? But
no.
that's what we're going to have to face.
It does need an absolute sledgehammer to come in and sort this out, doesn't it?
Yeah. But the thing I spend a lot of my time thinking about is how can we close them down faster, but without getting sued. That, if you like, is the holy grail. If we can do that, then we can save the country. But at the moment, it's not looking easy.
Have you looked into any sort of legal repercussions?
Yeah, I mean, we actually had an appeal a few months back to try to get some money in so that we could get some legal advice, because I had developed some ideas for ways that we could potentially close down wind farms, or at least claw back money from some of them. And that's in the hands of the barristers now to see whether that is actually something that might work legally. So yeah, if any of your viewers want to help us with that, we would be grateful for any support we can get. We're not a wealthy organization, and we need money to help us develop these ideas.
Well, as is with any common sense organization like yourselves and ours, we have some viewers that are very switched on and come from many different backgrounds. So you never know. You never know.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. No, it'd be very. Sorry, it'd be remiss of me. Go on, carry on.
I was going to say, I mean, I've talked quite a lot about electricity here, but in fact, the work I'm doing is rather wider than that. You know, I am looking at the whole net zero thing, which is bigger than just electricity. It's bigger than just energy. It's also, you know, net zero has corrupted a load of institutions too. We have institutions that they've been given legal duties to pursue decarbonization essentially at the cost of everything. So you know, if it comes down to consumer cost versus decarbonization, well, decarbonization works. So we have to fix that as well. There's all this, you know, it's quite interesting. I don't really know where the edges of this project are. I mean, one of the things which perhaps interesting from your point of view is, you know, I look at stuff like the stuff that they're doing on cars, and you know, one of the things that always annoys me when I get in my car is it just beeps at me constantly, which, you know, is essentially, it's a net zero sub project. They're trying to make your car as irritating as possible so that you don't drive anywhere. And that's good for net zero. And you get this with all this stuff about over regulation of the farming industry is allegedly about food safety, but actually I think it's probably really about decarbonization, because they're worried about cows farting. So
try stopping that.
So that's right. So again, I spend time going, can I, is this something that we should be looking at? Is this something that we can easily reverse? Because all these policies have been put in a way to make them very hard to reverse. So it's a very, very big project. It essentially has no end, but
the label net zero is a multitude of different things it's mind-blowing how big the issue has become. I think we touched on cars there, and that was the next thing I was going to go on to. Obviously, we've got this potential eradication of the internal combustion engine, whether that's by 2030, 2035, or hopefully never. But there's all sorts of deadlines bandied about and extended. We've got motoring manufacturers who are getting very sort of twitchy about it now, and are saying that they're going to carry on producing internal combustion engines, that the demand for electric vehicles isn't there. And this idea that they're going to stop people from having the choice of how they power their car, to us is madness. By all means, electric vehicles are practical for some people. If you've got Doris, age 86, who does 15 miles a week going to Tesco and to go and see her son somewhere and then home, fair enough. But don't push it onto everybody. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly where I am. I started out deeply skeptical of EVs, and I thought they had no future. I'm now in a position where I'm going, they may have a future. It will probably only be as second cars for wealthy people, and perhaps wealthy people who want to do virtue signaling. But if they want to virtue signal, that's absolutely fine. But don't expect a subsidy or a tax break, because obviously most of the EVs are bought as company cars or on salary sacrifice schemes. Don't expect that. So there are a whole lot of aspects of net zero that are quite easy to reverse, and that's one of them, because that's tax. So the government essentially can the next government can do away with the zero emission vehicle mandate very easily. It can do away with the tax breaks very easily. And then, we'll see whether EVs really are as popular as people think they are. I got driven home from an event last night by a friend, in his new EV. And, he said he was extremely pleased with it. He has another car for if he wants to make a longer journey. But he said for commuting, it's fine, and so it's fine. If that's what he wants, that's okay. Whether he would actually it would actually be as attractive when he didn't have the tax breaks. Who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah. So but at least that's easy. We can get if that relatively easily. Although everything comes down to, can you repeal the Climate Change Act first? Because if you did away with the zero emissions mandate, you'd probably get sued. But whether it would amount to anything, I don't know. That's the $6 million question for the next government: is can we repeal the Climate Change Act?
That goes down to brave government again. Whoever's in charge next time. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So, what institutions do you feel need some accountability in all of this? I mean,
okay, so if the Climate Change Act goes, then the Climate Change Committee goes with it, because it's a statutory body created by the Climate Change Act. So they are, if you like, the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Now, there are organisations like Ofgem, the gas and electricity markets regulator, and NESO, who run the electricity and gas grids.
Okay.
They have both been essentially subverted. They have been given net zero duties and sort of these rather vague. Everybody wants to phone me for some reason. NESO, they've been subverted. So they've been given duties towards decarbonisation. They've been given duties towards future consumers. Okay, so what that does is it then gives them, if it comes down to, this is going to put bills through the roof, they can just say, but we're worried about future consumers. So that's okay. We can ignore the other part of our statutory duty, which is to keep bills down. They are going to need to be fixed. Then almost every other regulator you can think of, so like the pensions regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, the Bank of England, they've all got climate duties too. So those are going to have to be done away with. Then there's a whole lot of stuff. Companies have to report on their climate change, their progress on climate change. The rules for company directors are, pretty totalitarian, frankly. If you are found to have not been telling the truth about your carbon emissions, it's the directors off to jail. It's absolutely appalling. So those are all going to have to go. There's a huge program of work, but again, it's I think it's relatively straightforward for a government that has repealed the Climate Change Act. They can just go.
Yeah, and carbon. I think carbon emissions, as we said at the top of the show, we seem to be one of the few, if not seemingly quite often feels like the only country that is really sort of doubling down and pushing this as a massive agenda. Where we create a minute amount of carbon, and there's also a school of thought that it's not the problem that people are making it out to be anyway. And so you've got all these other countries, all these huge countries that we would fit into 30 times over, that aren't on board with this at all. And I always liken it to putting a drop of orange squash into a glass full of water. It's not going to change it at all. And that's pretty much what we are. We're a drop of orange squash.
Yeah. So the idea that we have to decarbonize is it's essentially, it's an article of religious faith. It's not a rational proposition. The rational question to ask is, if we accept the science of climate change, what is the cost of allowing climate change to happen, and how does that compare to the cost of net zero? Okay, that's never been done by an official body. The Climate Change Committee produces these great big reports, but they're essentially fiddled. They don't ask what the cost of climate change is. They ask, what cost do we have to pretend climate change has in order to make this idea look reasonable? So they cheat. It's really unbelievably dishonest,
Yeah.
and frankly, people should be put in jail for it. But
Yeah.
I have actually done my own study on this.
Right.
So about 10 years ago, NESO, the energy system operator, did they asked how much net zero would cost. This is net zero by 2050. Now I went through that study in a lot of detail and found a lot of it was junk, but it was as a starting point, it was quite useful. So I then updated that and fixed a load of other problems, things that they had done that were, shall we say, dodgy, and came up with an estimate of what net zero might actually cost us. And how much it will cost depends on what your view of how much cheaper things will become over the next 30 years. And you have no idea how much is a wind farm going to cost in 2050. You have no idea, but you can say, okay, look, it might stay the same, it might fall by half. Okay, and so I came up with different estimates, and then you add on the cost of global warming. And you say, okay, that is the cost of that scenario. And then you can say, okay, if we did nothing and we got the full cost of global warming, what would that cost? And the answer is the best thing to do is to just do nothing and just accept the full cost of global warming. And it's not even close. It is trillions and trillions of pounds cheaper just to accept the cost of global warming, because the cost of global warming, contrary to what you read in The Guardian, and I imagine you're a dedicated Guardian reader, the cost of global warming isn't actually that high. The costs are essentially that there's two main costs. One is sea level rise. We're actually really good at sea level rise. We've been building seawalls for at least 3,000 years, and they don't cost a lot of money. They're actually quite cheap. Obviously, because you don't actually need them everywhere anyway, because most of the country is surrounded by cliffs, so you don't need to build a seawall there. It's only around low-lying areas. The other thing is flooding, and again, we're really good at building flood defenses. We've been doing that for centuries as well. So adapting to climate change is really pretty cheap. So adapting and just letting the climate do its worst is absolutely the way forward. Wealthy countries aren't really affected by the climate because we can adapt. It's another thing people don't understand is that even in what we consider poor countries, somewhere like Bangladesh, they're actually incredibly good at adapting to climate change now, because they're actually not that poor anymore, because they're exploiting their fossil fuel.
We're going that way.
So Bangladesh, I mean, I don't know how old you are. In the 1970s, there was a huge hurricane came off the Bay of Bengal and hit Bangladesh, and hundreds of thousands of people died either in the storm or from disease afterwards. There was actually a bigger hurricane hit Bangladesh about 5 or 6 years ago, and I think 3 people died. Bangladesh is all behind seawalls now. They don't get storms. The storm surges don't affect them. The water supplies have been protected against saltwater ingress. So they've moved on. So this idea that climate change is going to hit the poor countries in an incredible way is just not. It's just not true anymore. The world has moved on. We're good at adaptation.
It has moved on, and a lot of countries that people probably incorrectly assume are third world countries, that they're emerging, and they have now got significant cities and, like you say, ways of dealing with the changes in climate. And the one thing that we've always said at the ABD is the climate is changing. It always has, and it always will. Because that's true. The climate does change. We are still emerging from the last ice age. If you look into the deep sort of like climate evolution scale, we are on a curve that is still coming up. So naturally, we are going to experience changes in the climate that are sensationalized by the press. They're used as a news item when really it's just there. There's
Yeah.
nothing we can do to affect it. It is there. And like you were saying, what we shouldn't be doing is trying to combat it. We should be working with it and seeing how we can embrace it and what things we can put in place that help us to carry on having the lifestyle that we've grown accustomed to, whilst facing what it does.
Yeah, I mean this thing of people say, oh, it's got warmer, and therefore climate change, therefore panic stations, and as you say, it is complete nonsense. The climate, we know, it gets warmer and colder on every known time scale. On decadal scales, century scales, millennial scales. Hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years. The climate always changes. So to say it's got warmer when it gets warmer and then colder all the time on every known timescale is proving nothing. And this is there was some quite interesting exchanges in the House of Lords some years ago where the minister was sort of pressed to say, have you proven that the climate is doing something out of the ordinary in statistical terms? And they essentially wriggled and refused to answer the question there was about 10 rounds of questions before they finally said, well, no, we don't actually rely on the temperature records. It's all the models. And you see, once you know that it's all computer models, then you're into, well, this is just a hypothesis. This isn't real. This is just something that somebody's dreamt up. It's essentially an opinion. We all saw during COVID what dodgy computer models can do.
Yes. Absolutely.
So this again, once you know it's all models, you would base, you would rip up your economy on the basis of what a computer model says, on the basis of a hypothesis. This is insane.
I think if they were to have a look at I think we've got records that go back certainly as far as the 1700s and maybe even prior to that, but we can see the consequences of ice ages and how we emerge from them. And I'm pretty confident, I'm sure I'm right in saying that we are still on the upward curve from the last ice age.
I think that's right. Yeah.
So comparing figures throughout the centuries, you've got to take that into account, because that is the backbone of everything else that happens in terms of temperatures and conditions.
That's right.
You were asking before. I'm 55, so I was born in 1970. I'll be 56 later this year. So I can remember a time when, if we had a heat wave, yes, it would be on the news still. Yes, it would have on it. Excuse me. Get rid of that. Yes, we would have this more or less exactly the same news report in terms of footage. We would have people on a beach having an ice lolly, maybe with a hanky on the head, trousers rolled up, dipping their feet into the water and enjoying it. Right?
Yeah.
Back then, they would have said, "Oh, it's been a great few days. Enjoy the sun, shuffle the papers, end of the news." These days, we're melting. It's just stupid. We've been brainwashed.
The constant scaremongering is so. It's just wearying, isn't it? Because I think everybody understands now that it's just nonsense. There's a very interesting. Well, to a geek like me, interesting page in the report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So that's the official view of the science, and they list all the different weather phenomena and say whether they have detected a statistically significant change. And essentially, for pretty much everything, they're not even claiming there's been any change. So floods, droughts, snow, hail. They're just saying no. We haven't detected any statistically significant change. And of course, it's very difficult to detect a statistically significant change because it goes up and down all the time anyway. So how can you? It's really hard to show it's doing something out of the ordinary.
It is.
But again, that's not what our media tell us. And when we get to the end of the net zero story, when the wheels finally come off this, I think people are going to point fingers at the mainstream media, the Guardian and the BBC and, most of the rest of them as well, to be fair, and where were you guys? What were you doing? You are to blame for this.
Yeah. But also, I've got a son and a daughter, both in their early 20s. And the way that they would have been taught this at school would have been very different from what you and I had at school. So education has been greatly politicized, I believe. And so the way that they view things, it'll be interesting to see in the next 10, 20 years' time how their generation feels about things, because they've almost been brainwashed on how to think about this.
I think that's right. I think there is a contingent that senses that they are being brainwashed and are able to resist it. I think when the message is very certain and unnuanced, and there's no doubt, a lot of people will react to that and go, okay, I'm being spun a yarn here.
Yeah,
this is religion, not science. I went to a lecture by the head of the IPCC at the University of St Andrews, and he gave a 45-minute lecture, and there was just no discussion of any scientific question area of interest at all. And you're going, well, this is religion. This is, in science, a scientist is going, this is what we're really interested in. This is what we don't know. This is what, and of course, because climate catastrophism is religion, you can't express doubt about it. So, the poor chap had to just sort of say, yeah, isn't it marvelous? We know all this. Off we go. Let's decarbonize the economy.
This is what we're finding. We've got a number of people that are part of the organization that have come from a science background. And it's almost like they're treated as the religious folk, whereas the religious argument is treated as being legit. It's a real topsy-turvy world that we're living in, where people aren't looking at the science and going, "Oh, yeah, this adds up."
Yeah, no, that's right. Again, at the end of this, when it's all over, people will point fingers as well at the scientific establishment. The Royal Society and the Royal Meteorological Society, and will say, what were you guys playing at? I mean, I know people who've been trying to get the Royal Society to take up, to take a serious look at climate science, and to get the Royal Academy of Engineering to look at net zero in a serious way. I mean, the fact that there has been no cost benefit analysis of the net zero project. I mean, the Royal Academy of Engineering should be all over that, saying this is insane. We must do a cost benefit analysis. But everybody seems to run scared of the green blob. And to be fair, you need to be quite brave to go into the position we're in and just say, no, this is nonsense. I mean, we have had, as an organization, we've been demonized for years, but I mean, we still have problems here. We've had our offices spray painted, we've had the telephone wires cut more than once. It's pretty unpleasant. And I think as net zero comes to an end, I worry that the people involved, the green blob, will start to become violent. I think that is the real concern, because and
they paint themselves as being the opposite of that. Anything that doesn't go along with what they say, you're far right. What do you mean I'm far right? I'm not far right. So what are you talking about?
You're a denier,
and they'll attack, and they don't see that.
Yes,
we feel I've lost friends over my stance on things purely because they can't accept another viewpoint. I was more than willing to accept their viewpoint on things. It's an opinion. If that's their opinion, it doesn't mean I'm no longer your friend, but don't see them anymore.
Yes, because and of course this is the way cults work. Is that you must not allow people to question the central tenets of the faith. So if you want to question net zero, then I'm sorry, you have to be othered. You have to be disowned, removed from polite society. I mean, we as an organization have been othered for ages. I mean, I can still remember that the BBC did used to interview us, but when climate and net zero became really poisonous, sort of 10 years ago, suddenly it just dried up, and essentially we are banned from the BBC now because
because
we have
they're going with one viewpoint now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that the BBC is actually saying that they are going to do a review of their climate coverage currently, or climate and net zero. But frankly, I have my doubts whether anything will come of it. They've made noises before, but nothing comes of it. The problem being that the journalists at the cutting edge, your Justin Rollets or whatever, are green zealots, and they're not going to say anything polite about anybody who questions that faith. And this is, to my mind, the BBC just needs to be closed down.
The problem is, and it goes back to what you were saying about it's going to take a brave government to come in to change things. It's a bigger thing than that. It's not just the government. It's all these major institutions. It's the media. It's policing. It's education. It's everywhere. And they almost need to all change at the same time.
Yeah,
which is totally impractical.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I occasionally I sort of I sort of wonder about the wider problems affecting Britain, and the magnitude of the task of fixing the country is just so astonishingly large. You do sometimes wonder whether it is ever going to be possible. I mean, the task of fixing net zero on its own is a 10, 15, 20-year project. I mean, it's enormous, and to do everything else as well is it's a lot to ask of any government, let alone one that I mean, reform are they're doing good things on energy. They're starting to take it really quite seriously, which is great, but they don't have a philosophical unity, if you like, which to try and achieve the things that we want to achieve or we need to achieve, it's going to be very difficult without a party that has philosophical unity, because you need something to get everybody pulling in the same direction. So that's a concern too.
Yeah, the one image I have in my head is like spinning plates. You're trying to sort net zero out, and then hang on, education's falling. We need to sort. Oh no,
and there's immigration, and there's demographics, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's
whoever's in next, it's huge.
It's huge, but I guess things are so bad, at least there must be some easy wins there.
There's got to be, hasn't it? There's got to be. Well, it's been brilliant chatting with you. How can people get hold of you, Andrew?
So Net Zero Watch, our Net Zero Watch on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days. We're at netzerowatch.com on the web, and I'm on Twitter in my own right. You could probably look me up, Andrew Montford. Do a search for me, and you'll find me. So it would be nice to have some more followers.
Brilliant. And you can find us, folks. You can find us on abd.org.uk, and likewise, we're also on Twitter/X. Join the campaign with ABD, because, like we say, we're not just about motoring. We're also about this crazy notion about net zero. And between us and Andrew, the fight is on. So thank you for joining us today, Andrew. And
pleasure.
Nice to see you. See you again.
Okay, cheers.